This is HBR News number 382. Tired of cis white men? Come right with us, where we reflect on the stories of the week and give it the Badger treatment. Hello, everyone, and we are just really quick. Happy Movember, Men's Health Month, and also we are 1 week away from International Men's Day. So let's consider this the manhood week. I am welcome to Honey Badger Radio. Sorry. Hope you're doing well this week and that you're laughing at all this crazy stuff that's going on so that you are not consumed by it. I am President-elect Brian, and I'm joined by, as always, my austere patriarchs and our handmaiden, Hannah, Mike, Jay, and Dr. Random Cam. Hannah's having some technical issues, but we assume that she's going to figure it out and be back. So we're going to leave her up on the screen here.
Okay. Oh, hey, Hannah, you're muted, by the way. That might be what you need to do.
Well, that wasn't a mute. She wasn't muted before. Now she's deafened and mute.
Oh dear.
Yeah,
it wouldn't be HBR without technical difficulties, folks.
Hopefully
I was muted so I could do my microphone test when I came back in without interrupting you guys. It's one of these weird things. Every so often, Discord just decides that my microphone doesn't count or something, but it's only on the laptop that uses System 10.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird, but we can hear you now. So you're back. That's great. Are you going to be on this machine then?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So yes, welcome back. We have a great show lineup for you guys today, so please be sure to continue the conversations both in the chat as well as the comments section. On this week's show, we're going to be looking at, I got like a couple of academic stories. So we're going to be talking about Gettysburg College, and they have like a new, like a writing event for students who are sick and tired of cis white men and their opinions. Nicola Sturgeon plans to abolish jury trials in rape cases. Tokyo Tech in Japan. For some of you who might think Japan is based and this isn't going to happen over there, they are introducing female student quotas and more.
I'm surprised they've only just introduced them. I thought it would have.
Oh, I'm sure
been going on everywhere, all over the world forever at this point.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have some things to say about that.
Well, my suspicion is that it's been going on maybe in like less prestigious colleges, and this is what makes the news. But yeah, so that's going on, and more. So stick around; it's going to be a good time. And we're also going to be looking at this article from Ms. Magazine, the classic
Yay.
Ms. Magazine. I know it's always good for this. Called "Men Are 100% Responsible for Unwanted Pregnancies." Gabriel Blair on her viral tweet turned book. So she literally wrote a tweet and it went viral, and then she wrote a book inspired by it. And
now feminists have been using that argument. Feminists have been using that argument on Twitter for about a year now, and they hit a point where they just keep repeating it. Yeah,
obviously, because we've actually talked about this subject before. Yeah. So,
funnily enough, women are 100% responsible for killed babies in the womb. Men don't get to make that decision. Apparently, women always want them, but they're always the ones that kill them, and the doctors. Well, yeah.
I have an argument, counter argument for the argument that's made in this article, and I've been using it, and it pisses them off. But anybody that's not a diehard feminist that hears it has to agree with it. So we'll
share that in the the patron show. But so yeah, the article's called "Men Are 100% Responsible for Unwanted Pregnancies." Gabriel Blair on her viral tweet turned book, "Ejaculate Responsibly." So we will be looking at this in the patron show. I'm sure it's going to be really educational and really enlightening.
Let me guess. If you ejaculate anywhere but in a woman, you're an incel. It's funny how that works, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the whole argument is really about controlling men and their sexuality, and it's based on a straw man of anti-abortion arguments, and it's bullshit.
All right. So anyway, if you would like to participate in our after shows, either as a member of the audience or a participant, which means that you can be a part of the conversation, please consider becoming a badger by going to feedthebadger.com and setting up a monthly subscription. And if you don't want to wake up one morning to find that we have been yeeted from the internet, please go to badgerfeed.com or honeybadgerradio.com so you can look at essentially where our content lives. Now, some of you guys probably prefer to watch this on Rumble. It looks like there's a problem with Rumble this time and that it's not taking. So if it's not taking, do us a favor and just, come on over to YouTube or Twitch, or we're on Twitch, we're on YouTube, we're on Facebook, and we are also on DLive. So you can
I discovered something weird about Rumble that might be part of the problem. For some reason, even though everything else stops when you stop the stream, when you stop broadcasting, from it doesn't stop streaming on Rumble. You have to go in and manually stop. So it might decide you're still streaming from your last show. Sometimes it'll end because it's been too long, but sometimes, like, I went to start to set up the Thursday show last Thursday, and another stream was still streaming, and I had to go in and shut it off in order to. It was really weird because I've never seen it do that before.
Right.
Technical difficulties.
Rumble's still a bit janky, folks. It'll get there.
You used to have to do that with YouTube. So
it'll get there.
And then it changed. So
yeah. Okay, so as I was saying, if you're on Rumble and you're wondering what's going, if you're on Rumble and you're wondering what's going on, you can't hear me. So, but if you know someone that probably is on Rumble, send them over to our YouTube, our Twitch, our DLive, or our Facebook. And, we'll just have to go from there. So, with all that said, let's get into today's stories. We're going to start with Gettysburg. So, Mike J., if you could be so kind.
Why, certainly, Brian. So, divisive posters have begun popping up around the Gettysburg College campus. Posters advertise an event that claims to be part of the college's Peace and Justice Senior Project. The posters ask a question. Quote, "Tired of white cis men?" End quote. And invites viewers to attend a 2-hour event at the Gender and Sexuality Resource Center where they can paint and write about it, with these paintings and writings to be displayed publicly afterwards. The posters have sparked student backlash, with some calling their rhetoric dividing. But this isn't the first controversy on campus in recent memory. Roughly a month ago, they held a public drag show in the middle of campus, an event which was also run by the school's Gender and Sexuality Resource Center. The drag show is said to have been held in response to a guest lecture by Dr. Ryan T. Anderson, a political philosopher best known for his support of traditional marriage and criticism of transgenderism. The school also held a protest sign-making class right before Dr. Anderson's lecture. Weird timing, huh? One student who spoke to Fox News noted his observations, stating, quote, "Normally, rhetoric on posters of this nature tends to be more inclusive and welcoming to the target student groups, but this rhetoric is simply divisive. The faculty on campus always preaches unity among students on campus, but never actually do anything to enact this unity. The school should not allow this type of rhetoric, as it openly and boldly defies what the college says they want to achieve from their student body. This incident, like many other incidents that have occurred at Gettysburg College, make me feel as if the school is incompetent and that the school no longer allows students to speak freely. They only allow ideas and concerns of students to be heard that fit their ideas that the school would like to promote. The school does not have an accurate grasp of how students truly feel about the college. Most are angered and discouraged that the school is improving not just from this event, but many other events that have occurred before this. End quote. As of right now, the planned event has been postponed.
It's kind of ironic that a lot of these drag artists are cis white men.
Mm-hmm.
They're not actually transsexual. They just dress like caricatures of female prostitutes and they twerk for the entertainment value. If they just had, trans people coming in to talk to students respectfully while dressed respectably, that would be a lot less controversial. But evidently that's not good enough. That's why it's obvious that this isn't about raising awareness of LGBT plus issues. It's about exposing people to sexualized content using cis white men. Bear in mind, these are invariably the same people who will complain that women are sexualized by a patriarchal society when they wear makeup and dress like whores and twerk in front of men. But when they get men to do the same thing in front of children, they pull a shocked Pikachu face when anyone says, hey, maybe this is appropriate for the children you're doing it in front of. I realize it's not children in this case; it's college-age students. But we've already slipped that far down the slope. So don't be telling me it's a slippery slope fallacy. What is the point in all this? I mean, if it's not just sexualizing children for its own sake because you're a bunch of groomers and nonsense, why else would you be doing this? And I think it's because they're trying to humiliate cis white men.
Mm-hmm.
The drag artists themselves don't seem to find it humiliating. They seem to find it empowering, which is a red flag the size of a football field when they're doing it in front of children. But I think to the feminist college staff who are employing these drag artists,
Mm-hmm.
the noncery is just instrumental. Feminists assume that it must be humiliating for women to dress like whores and twerk around in front of men. And so they conclude, we need to get men to do this because they're the ones who need to be humiliated.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it doesn't occur to them that women can also feel empowered by it. For the most part, the women working at strip clubs don't feel humiliated by what they do, or they wouldn't do it. We've all worked, remedial dog's body jobs, and they're all a little bit humiliating from time to time, but we choose the kinds of jobs we're prepared to do. Strippers become strippers because they'd rather do that than clean sewers or whatever. I would imagine having money thrown at you just for getting your kit off is more empowering than cleaning up people's shit. If anyone is being exploited in that scenario, it's the sad clown men throwing money at the stage in a dingy nightclub at 2 a.m. But feminist zealots don't understand this. So they take their twisted interpretation of the world and they project it into the creation of whatever they think is the opposite. And naturally, they'll say that the drag artists are doing this because it's empowering for them, and they're right for the most part, but they're still getting men to perform an activity that they think is humiliating when women do it. So, huzzah, hooray, exultate, jubilate, we're changing things. We're subverting your expectations. And that counts as progress. We're making men the victims of what we think is a force that victimizes women. But the only actual victims in this whole process are the children who are watching this convoluted horror show and wondering why the hell they've found themselves at their parents' behest, shoving dollar bills into some fat, sweaty bastard skin-tight thong in a dark room to the sound of thunderous applause. Not to mention what's going to be considered normal after this. I'm telling you, this is what it comes down to. It's misinterests trying to humiliate men above and beyond the call of any duty or any rhyme or reason. They don't care how many children they fuck up in the process. It's all for the greater good. These are all just symptoms of the problem, and the problem is misandry. I guess I would say that because it's what we tend to say here, but we say it because it's true, and because no one else is saying it.
Yeah, and if you want to like end this, that's what you should be looking at, is doing what you can to fight back against misandry. All right. So, anybody else? Hannah, did you want to say something about this?
Yeah, I'm going to say a couple of things here. The first one is I want to point out, like, they always attach cis white, and when they're doing this, so they're trying to disguise it. You know, like, look, we're being racist against white cis white men. We're being, I don't know what you would call it, heterophobic, I guess.
Discriminatory towards heterosexual white men. But that's not really what they're doing.
Exactly, because they don't really do this to cis white women, right? Like they almost never target cis white women, and the only time that you ever see cis white women targeted with anything, it's you guys are bad feminists, right? Which, to be honest, I'm a bad feminist. Being an anti-feminist is pretty bad for feminism, right? But so that's fair to call me a bad feminist. But I think that's actually a good label to have. But when they do this to cis white men, this is an attack on the entire culture. Men are the backbone of the entire culture, right? Men are the only reason we have cities. Men are the only reason we have things like indoor plumbing. They're the only reason we have electricity coming to our homes. They're the only reason that we have homes that are not grass huts, right? So this is not just an attack on, I know that just is a bad term for that, but this is when you attack men, you are attacking the entire culture. And the goal is to break down and weaken the culture. Without, men are the backbone of the family. So without the strength and adulthood and rationality of men, without men being not frivolous all the time, which being a drag queen is pretty frivolous. Without men being the guys that get her done, without men being the guys that drag their asses out of bed at 3:00 in the morning to get down to the power station to make sure, that the squirrel that just fried this one part of the grid doesn't freeze people in January, we would be fucked, and not in a good way. And this is what this is all about. Like, this on the surface is just psychological manipulation. This on the surface is somebody trying to make money. And then the people that are involved in it, this is all about scoring social points and making money to the individuals that are involved. But the reason that this scores social points and the reason that this makes money is that above them in the hierarchy of academia and above them in the hierarchy of finance, there are organizations that are promoting this specifically to break down Western civilization so that another civilization can come in and dominate it and take over and make us the submissive culture. And that's the thing that you have to understand is there's a guy that talked about this in 1984. And I'm not talking about the book. I'm talking about the year. He did an interview. I want to say ABC Canada, but I might be wrong about that. But he did an interview, and it's all over YouTube. Like, you can find the short version that just talks about this part, the demoralization of Western culture.
Are you talking about Yuri Bezmenov?
Yes. And
it's amazing. Everyone should watch this.
If you haven't seen it, you have to see it, because he predicted this. Everything that's happening right now, everything that's happening in American politics, everything that's happening in UK politics, everything that's happening in British politics, right? This started like 40, 50 years ago.
Oh, it's way older than that.
But I mean, this particular trajectory of it, and that was, they targeted the hippie counterculture in the United States.
They got started in the colleges.
Yep, got started in the colleges. And I know a lot of people are gonna blame the cultural Marxists that came over from Nazi Germany, but this was KGB. And they're partly responsible
Bezmenov
too.
was a KGB defector.
Yes, he was a defector. Donahue, he was on Donahue. Thanks, Derek Workman. And so you gotta listen to that. You gotta consider what he had to say. And it's not that it means live and let live is bad, right? It's that the KGB targeting hippie culture, what they did was they twisted different strokes for different folks into everybody that's not normal is good and normal is bad.
Yeah.
And normal has been dominating and oppressing abnormal throughout history, and demonizing abnormal throughout history, and therefore normal is guilty. And that's not true. It's bullshit, and you should not listen to that. So you kind of have to be aware of what's going on. And if you want to break down a culture, if you want to destroy the cohesiveness of a culture, and you want to destroy a civilization, you have to weaken the men, because they are its defense. You have to separate the women from the men, because if the women are not loyal to the men before you start breaking down the culture, they'll more easily join a new culture when you take over. And you can take the men out, and that's basically what will happen. And we're seeing it in real time right now. You kind of have to turn this ship around now, or it's going to be too late, if it's not already. But this is actually a much more serious story than it looks like. And every story like this is much more serious than it looks like. And in regard to the whole drag show thing, I don't know if there's any other like middle-aged old farts like me that used to hang out with well, I have hung out with a variety of people, but drag shows were not always like this. Like, not all of them, because I used to see people performing like show tunes, and people doing scenes from movies, and just like My Fair Lady. They do scenes from My Fair Lady, and they do scenes from The Wizard of Oz, and they do all kinds of neat little they used to do from the movie about Gypsy Rose Lee. I think it was just called Gypsy. They used to do songs from that. It used to look a lot more like The Birdcage, and I don't know if maybe there was a much more sexualized version of it that I missed out on. But that's like back in the 90s. That's what I used to see. And now all of a sudden they're just mimicking strippers, which, that might be about money too, because when I worked at the gas station,
you're talking about drag
strippers
queens?
Okay. But when I worked at the gas station, strippers would come in, and I'd find out from them, like they made in 4 hours, like what I was going to make in 2 weeks. But so it might just be about the money for the individuals doing it, because if you get people, stuffing money in your thong, then you make quite a bit rather quickly. But it really wasn't like, I don't remember it being like that. So this is a change too. This is another twisting different strokes for different folks into normal is bad. This is talent is now not necessary, and skill is not necessary. Having a great singing voice, not necessary. Just shake your ass. You don't even have to be pretty. You don't even have to look feminine. You just have to get up there and guilt trip people into participating, because if they don't, they're transphobic, right?
Right.
So
The closer you can get
that's
to
a
children, the
complete
better.
change to me.
Yeah.
And now they're doing it to children, and the whole point of that is it's a lot harder to weaken men after they've grown up. You can weaken them a lot easier if you start feminizing them when they're boys. So that's why children are being targeted with this.
Mm-hmm. Especially boys, that is. I was just gonna say, it's weird because I think that. So I used to work in theater, and I saw some drag shows that would be put on for certain special events and stuff. And I've been to a couple as well. And one of the things that I always thought was weird about what's going on now is that drag queens are not trans. Like those two things were very separate animals. Drag queens were performers that were, I guess they just had an interest in simulating female behavior. And
Tom Cruise isn't really a fighter pilot. It's an act.
It's an act. Right. So it was weird because they that's how it always was. And even when, because I knew trans people, and when you work in theater, you're going to be working around a lot of queer folks, right? And they could make the distinction. Like they knew, well, that guy's not gay. Like some of these drag queens weren't even gay. They just thought it was fun to do that. So, they would just say, oh yeah, that guy's not gay, but he's just a queen, and or whatever. And they had these like different distinctions. Now there are no distinctions. If you put a flower in your hair, you're basically a woman now. And it's funny because it is like what I have noticed is that this is what gets pushed, and all distinctions are completely tossed out. So, if you were ever a drag queen, even just to try it out for fun or whatever, and you're not gay, and it doesn't matter, right? You're a drag queen now. You're one of them. And I think, first of all, that's just really strange. The other thing I was thinking about was this, framing of this event as tired of cis white men, and I think it needs to be driven home a little bit more that when they say cis white men are whatever, the worst, this isn't about the fact that they're cis or the fact that they're white. It's about the fact that they're men. And if you doubt that, and the reason why they target white men is because we all have a problem with a lack of sympathy for white people when they get attacked. And they know this. That's why they're okay with it. Like, let me give you an example. This might seem really edgy, but I don't think it is. Kanye West. Kanye West made some comments regarding, who runs the music industry. Okay. Now, he didn't hurl any insults. He didn't say anything that was threatening to anyone. Right. He simply said, this is what I see. Right. This is what the industry is. Now, he could be wrong about that, but that doesn't mean that, he should be banned from everything. And yet he was. And a lot of people made, this into a huge deal. But what's funny is when I saw that, I was like, but all he was doing was, it's just pointing out the reality. He didn't it's not disparaging. It's not an attack. It's none of that. Okay. All he did was say, I work in the music industry and it's basically dominated by Jews. And I'm like, yeah, that's probably true. It doesn't really mean anything. Like nothing else is being suggested there except that's his observation. And so, but it was a huge fucking deal, and he was banned from everything. And Ben Shapiro put out a whole screed, just calling him anti-Semitic, even though he didn't say anything anti-Semitic. Not at any point. And I was listening for it. And what is funny about that is that if Kanye had said the same complaint about white people and just said...
Like he did when George Bush was president?
Yeah, like he did when George Bush was president. Or if he just, didn't differentiate between Jewish people and white people, and he just said they're all white people to me, which is a common thing people do. If he just said, yeah, white people, they're running everything and all that, nobody would get upset. He would probably get a bunch of more sponsors, I would guess, because white people, it's like you can go after them. You can claim whatever the hell you want about white people.
On a side note, I'm gonna recommend something real quick.
Mm-hmm.
For perspective on what Kanye West said, look up Michael. I'm not sure how Ruark is pronounced, but it's Michael Ruark. He is a Jewish journalist, and he wrote an article titled "Jews Do Control the Media," published it on October 26th, and he made the argument, he made the point that when somebody else isn't saying it, Jews are proud of their successes. But when there's a conspiracy theory attached to it, when they're talked about like a mafia, then they get mad.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the funny thing. If it's any other group, right? We talk about Irish gangs, we talk about black gangs, we talk about the Italian
gangs.
mafia.
Oh my God! Did you hear about
Dave
that?
Chappelle.
Was Dave Chappelle's joke. When it's the blacks, it's a gang.
Well, see,
when it's the Italians, it's a mafia. When it's the Jews, it's a coincidence.
There's something in the water in Dayton that helps you understand these things.
You know how Dave
Just to brag,
got
Chappelle
that?
is from Dayton. He's from
Dayton.
Dayton.
You know how Dave got that bit through when he did the rehearsal. He did a completely different monologue. It wasn't until they were actually recording that he did that bit about the Jews.
Where did he say it?
That's funny.
SNL opening.
Oh my God! Are you serious?
Yeah, you can find it.
Let me get you the link. Let me get you the link.
Oh, fuck. That would make SNL worth watching.
Mm-hmm.
I was joking about that too, because I knew he was on SNL, and I heard about it was that all the people that were on the show were pissed off that he was on SNL.
That was a rumor. That was a rumor that no one has been able to prove.
Well, it would be fitting because the writers for SNL are not funny, and he is, so they could be jealous. But in any case,
the whole thing I heard is they were trying to wag the dog with that. They were trying to create the hype, oh my God, did you hear that everyone refused to work with him in the writer's room? And
good grief.
He even released a statement that's furthest from the truth. I'm working with them right now. They're great people. They love me. I love them.
That's exactly the kind of thing I expect him to do too, because if you run into him in the Dayton area,
there you go, Hannah.
He's a very nice guy. Great. I will watch it, but not in the middle of the show. But the point I want to make about this is it's kind of a catch-22 for Jews, because people talk about them like they're all in cahoots with each other, which is bullshit. But that doesn't mean that there are not, just like every other interest, whether it's an ethnic interest or a religious interest or a political interest or a, like any kind of interest, a club for people who like guns, right? And which people have made that political too. But every interest has groups of people that work together for a purpose, and it can be a good purpose or it can be a bad purpose. But the minute that you point out, that group is working for a bad purpose and they're Jewish, then you're engaging in conspiracy theories.
It's not even necessarily for a bad purpose. It's just Jews do well for themselves. You can say that. They do well for themselves. What's anti-Semitic about that?
And that's what this article says too. Basically, And this is something that it's important to be able to discuss these things without an all or nothing look at it. Like, there are groups of people that that use their political influence to prevent other people from succeeding. There are groups of people that use their political influence to control political thought using guilt tripping, and there are grifts that are used that way. The feminist grift, right? The minority grift, and when they go up against anybody else, Jews have the minority grift. Historically, when they go up against Black people, they haven't had the minority grift. But since Kanye West is saying things that are politically incorrect in association with his statements about Jews controlling the media, then he loses the minority grift. But I would like to remind you that the minister for the church that Obama went to called Jews termites.
Mm-hmm.
And
Minister Farrakhan.
Yes. Yeah. And Farrakhan said everything that West is saying, and nobody threatened to put him in an institution.
Well, I think it's a lot worse, because West, he's not insulting anyone.
Right.
But Farrakhan was,
And so. Farrakhan was inciting violence. Mm-hmm. And he was trying to incite, like, that was a goal. He was trying to incite violence against Jewish people. Mm-hmm. That was not just him complaining about the way he's been treated and the difficulty that he sees in people independently controlling their own careers. That was him going with the all Jews everywhere are in cahoots and they control the world, which I think is really detrimental to discussing any type of faction that controls any type of work area or anything like that. Right. So but this article, everybody should read this article. And again, it's Michael, I think it's Ruark, Ruark.
It might just be Rourke, as in Mickey Rourke.
It might be Rourke. I never actually paid attention to how that was spelled. But it's Michael Ruark. You might have to look it up on something other than Google. And the title actually is Jews Do Control the Media. And his first 3 paragraphs are about that, how Jews do like to brag about that when they're talking about it as a success. They only get mad when the wrong person is criticizing them.
Yeah, or they just bring it up. Like I said, just simply bringing it up is not a criticism. It's just saying, yes, right. I've observed this. And they get some Jewish people, they get really upset that you noticed. I think that's kind of a problem. But look, I'm going off topic. I just wanted to say that ultimately there is like a way that we, are conditioned to react to certain generalizations or even observations. That's why I brought up the what Kanye did. But if he was saying that about white people, then no one would care. Like this would be just water under the bridge. Like we wouldn't even be talking about it. And
same as if he was saying it about men.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to get at as well. Even more than that would be if he was saying this about men. Because, at least with white people, if you demonize them, some white people will say, you know what, that's not fair. Racism is racism. It doesn't matter how you, color it or whatever. And I don't think this is the right way to go. And yeah, there won't be a ton of sympathy for that. But the truth is that that's a correct statement. But if you say that about men, not only will you not likely get a lot of pushback, but most people won't even notice that you just did that. Or they might even agree, depending on like the context. And I think that, and you can just look at how, minority men are treated in our media to confirm this. I think that this is ultimately an attack on men. And they're using these additional descriptors to, allow people to have a little bit more tolerance towards the ultimate insult, which is towards men. And I think that is really where they're moving towards. So, a purpose of that is to essentially make men, appear to be worthless in society, or to demoralize them, or to get women to not find them attractive anymore, because like they're being treated as a burden. You know, they're like, oh, women have to take care of these men, you know, and it's so much work and all this other shit. So I think that is also a big part of this. But anyway.
Yeah, and good on Dave Chappelle for getting through a whole comedy bit without shitting on white men. Good on any comedian who can get through a bit without shitting on men in general.
It wasn't completely without flaw. He repeated the totally blown the fuck out Russia collusion Trump narrative, unironically and uncritically.
Nobody's perfect.
Yeah, well, you know, he is on the left. I mean, that's going to be.
He is on the left.
Yeah, he is on the left.
But he had some absolute zingers in there, and let's just say it definitely pissed off the right people.
Okay.
Namely the left people.
Yeah.
All right, so let us know what you guys think about this in the comment section. I'm going to move on to the next story, and I look forward to seeing your thoughts. All right. So, Nicola Sturgeon, which the Scottish Prime Minister. So I think we may have covered her before, because I swear I feel like I've heard that name. Proposed plans to get rid of jury trials in cases of rape. She and her ministers have cited, quote, outdated attitudes towards victims, end quote, and, quote, low conviction rates, end quote. However, Frances McMenamin, a senior lawyer and government advisor, as well as the most senior woman in the Scottish Bar, expressed concerns about these plans. She compared the judge-only trials to Hitler, who abolished jury trials in 1933, and China. Which is probably, I like how it doesn't show a date for China, like China, that like they're doing it now.
China.
China. She urged for more to be done for women who have to testify, as well as the low pay of criminal lawyers in the legal profession. She said to the Sunday Post that, quote, China's new national security law aimed at suppressing Hong Kong's democracy movement is abolishing trial by jury. A comparison to China is not one which Scotland should court by removing the current jury system only for sex offense cases, end quote. She also said that, quote, even worse, Scotland should not risk further comparison with Hitler, who in 1933, in response to his dissatisfaction at the Reichstag fire trial, in which all but one of the accused were acquitted, abolished trial by jury and set up the People's Court. It was a special court set up outside of the operations of the constitutional frame of law, whose president almost always sided with the prosecution and in which there was no presumption of innocence, end quote. According to the Telegraph, the Lord Advocate Dorothy Bain backed the idea of a pilot, claiming radical action was needed to help clear a backlog of cases that she said was disproportionately harming women and girls.
Lol.
A Scottish government spokesman said, at quote, as part of its vision for justice, the Scottish government wants to strengthen the rights and improve the experiences of people involved in the justice system, especially women and children.
Fuck's sake.
We are continuing to explore the proposal for single judge trials for case of rape, in line with our commitment to give curious consideration to all the recommendations made by Lady Dorian's review into the management of sexual offense cases. We are doing this with input from justice partners, including the Faculty of Advocates, end quote.
Yeah, it's easier to influence a judge than it is to influence a jury. And I don't just mean financially. And by that, I'm not even talking about bribery. Judges have their reputation to think of. They're ongoing. reputation. They have to ask themselves, is my ruling on this case going to affect my future as a judge? As such, they are beholden to pervasive narratives, not just from the state, but from the media. We at Honey Badger Radio have experienced what happens when a judge simply believes what they read in the smear merchant media, whereas juries aren't concerned with their future as jury members. It's a one-time commitment, and for the most part, they'd rather not even be there. That's why the system works. And they're not swayed by the narrative of the smear merchant media because they're not supposed to be listening to it. That's the idea. Anyway, but sometimes they can't avoid it. So if you want to sway a jury to your desired outcome, you need to threaten them. And the threat needs to be so wide and fast and ubiquitous that they can't avoid getting wind of it. Like in the Derek Chauvin trial. If a not guilty verdict will result in widespread riots that would cause multiple deaths, that'll spook the jury into choosing the lesser of two evils and sending an obviously innocent man to prison. But that's a lot more difficult than simply nobbling one judge, or even a multitude of judges. It only happens in cases as high profile as the Chauvin case. So if we can get rid of juries, it becomes orders of magnitude easier to control the outcome of any given criminal case. Hitler did it, and he had the power to hold a gun to any judge's head. And if you think Nicola Sturgeon is any less corrupt, then I have a bridge to sell you. Guess what the SNP is? A nationalist, socialist party. A socialist party that calls themselves nationalist.
Oops.
Rather than a nationalist party that calls themselves socialist. But let's not split hairs here. They're a totalitarian regime that has already decided who are the Untermensch. And is it any surprise that this is only being proposed for cases of rape in a country in which the only people who can be charged with rape are men? They will not stop until every man is incarcerated, regardless of his innocence, and is being forced into slave labor for the benefit of the holy ones. And by the holy ones, I don't mean women. I mean the party. If you're a woman who stands in their way, you're going down too. I don't know who you should be voting for, Scotland. You just really need to stop voting for the SNP. Yeah, wishful thinking, I know, but yeah, we can dream.
All right. So, does anybody, before I go off, does anybody else have anything to say about this? I'm going to take the silence as a no. All right. This there's no better way for a totalitarian regime to come in and make the entire population vulnerable to complete and utter domination, to bring in social credit, to bring in show trials, to bring in the ability to just convict by accusation, than to attack men using rape victims. This is sexual exploitation. And this should be treated as sexual exploitation of victims of rape. And only the female ones, because they don't consider the male ones at all, right? They don't even give them any thought whatsoever. But this is basically prostitution of rape victims as a political prostitute in order to dominate and control you. And this targeting is happening in the United States too. And people, it's genuinely working in both countries. It's probably genuinely working all over the Western world because people have forgotten what justice is, right? Justice doesn't have anything to do with conviction or acquittal. Justice is a relentless pursuit for the truth, the facts of the case, what can be proved, and then acting reasonably within the law on those facts, not on compassion for somebody's complaint, right? And not on compassion for somebody's circumstances. How that reasonable reaction takes place can take those things into consideration. But the actual process of determining guilt or innocence should never be based on those things. It should be based on, all right, what actually happened and what is its relationship to the law? Is the law just? Is the law in the United States constitutional? Every nation has their standard for what constitutes a just law versus an unjust law, right? And that's it. There should not be anything else. No official that belongs in government will ever say, as part of its vision for justice, the Scottish government or the whatever government wants to strengthen the rights and improve the experiences of people involved in the justice system, especially this demographic. There should never, ever be an especially any demographic. Not even the demographic crime victims. That should never happen. And here we are, using the sympathies of the people, using gynocentrism, using compassion for women who claim to be victims, and using compassion for women who are victims, and ignoring the fact that there are also women who are bald-faced motherfucking liars, who will go into a court system, who will go into a police station, who will lie their asses off about a man and drag him through the court system, possibly get him incarcerated, possibly get him killed by other men defending their honor. You think we don't live in an honor culture? Get accused of rape sometime and you'll find out we do, right? And it's completely ignored. Why? Because political pundits and political propagandists and political activists know that they can prostitute the concept of rape victims for political fodder. And it's bullshit. Again, this is bullshit. Do not tolerate this. Do not fall for this. This is not justice. This does not prevent rape, and it doesn't avenge rape. It makes everyone, men, women, and children, more vulnerable to wrongful conviction based on false allegations and wrongful incarceration, wrongful community action that is outside of the law, and wrecked lives. And the only weapon that men have against this is lawsuits. So if you are accused or you know somebody who's accused, encourage that person. If there is evidence that they can prove that the accusation itself was a lie, not a mistake, not, some stupid scenario where the girl is passed out and she thinks something happened or something did happen and she thinks it's that guy, but it's this person, that kind of thing you may not be able to sue on. But when it is a lie, sue the shit out of everybody involved, including the accuser. If you're legally allowed to, sue the accuser. Sue the state. Sue the police if they failed to investigate properly. Sue the prosecutor. Sue the judge if you can. That's like sue everything that moves that's involved in your campaign. Everybody but the bailiff, because he just does what he's told. And do it every single time. That has to start happening every single time. Every single time, whether it's a domestic violence allegation that turns out to be a bald-faced lie and you can prove it, whether it's a rape allegation, whether it's sexual harassment, anything. Just sue the shit out of them. Because if it starts costing money, they'll have to address it. And they won't be able to address it without admitting the scope of false allegations that's involved. And that'll just be the ones that can be proved. But this cannot be allowed to stand. You cannot have a free country without due process. If due process goes down the toilet, everything else goes down the toilet. You do not have free speech because you can't be presumed innocent on the basis of your civil rights. You can't have a right to defend yourself because you can't fight for your innocence. You can't be presumed innocent until proven guilty in terms of self-defense. You can't have any of that. You can't trust to get married because if you get divorced, you're presumed to be the abusive husband that forced her into the marriage and dominated her throughout the marriage and deserves to have his kids taken away. And every penny that he owns go into her household instead of his. There is no society, no civilization without due process. This, like I said, you have to attack this from every angle. Sue the shit out of them.
Absolutely. Does anyone else have any thoughts on this story? All right, I'm gonna move on to the next one. But like, guys, let us know what you guys think about this, and if you're in Scotland, because I know I think we have some Scots that watch. Let us know, did you know about this, and what are your thoughts on this? So can this be undone? I don't know. I think that it really, really should, but I don't know if it's possible. So let us know in the comments. All right. So I'm going to move on to the next story. And yeah, this is about Brazil. Let me just, yeah, here we go. Sorry. And then we got one more. So, back in 2010, Brazil passed a law criminalizing parental alienation. The law defined parental alienation as interference with the psychological formation of a child or adolescent that promotes repudiation of a parent or damage to the establishment or maintenance of ties with a parent, which such an act is practiced by a parent, grandparent, those who have the child or adolescent under their authority, like a guardian or something like that, custody or supervision. The law provides examples of parental alienation, such as waging campaigns of disparagement of a parent's behavior in the exercise of parenthood, hindering the exercise of parental authority, and limiting contact between the child or adolescent and the other parent, making the right to have a close family life with the child or adolescent difficult, deliberately omitting relevant all information about the child or adolescent, including educational, medical, and change of address data from the other parent, submitting false complaints against a parent, family members, or their grandparents, preventing them from having a relationship with the child or adolescent, and moving to a remote site with no explanation in order to hamper the relationship between the child or adolescent and the other parent or the grandparents or other relatives. Recently, UN experts have chimed in, urging Brazil's new government to axe the parental alienation law. So here comes the UN for some fucking reason. In a statement, they said, "Today we call on the newly elected government of Brazil to strengthen its resolve to end violence against women and girls." That had nothing to do with what I just read. All that stuff about parental alienation, okay? "And we call for the end of the legal, long-standing application of the concept of parental alienation and similar variations in cases of domestic violence and abuse, which penalize mothers and children in Brazil." The law, here's more of this. And some of this shit is really surreal, okay? The law has led to the proliferation of the application of the parental alienation theory by family courts. Despite the lack of clinical or scientific legitimacy, the law has also largely enabled fathers accused of domestic violence and abuse to successfully levy false allegations against the mothers with whom they are in custody battles or disputes. So they're saying that there are abusive men who are making false allegations against their ex-wives or the mothers of their kids. Family courts regularly dismiss allegations of sexual abuse of the children brought forward by the mothers against their fathers or stepfathers, disbelieving and punishing mothers, including through the loss of custody rights to their children. We are gravely concerned about the underlying gendered stereotypes that contribute to the legitimization or the legitimation of the concept of parental alienation and its resort mainly against women when the court decision regards the right to custody or guardianship. Such gendered stereotypes are profound and discriminatory, as the testimonies of women who claim their children are abused are being dismissed or considered of inferior value and credibility. These profoundly discriminatory approaches essentially result in a miscarriage of justice and the continued exposure of mother and child to abuse, life-threatening situations, and other violations of their fundamental freedoms. The UN experts claim that Brazil has one of the highest incidences of femicide in the world. This is
for fuck's sake.
The UN, okay? They cite that a survey of crime statistics in 2021 revealed that one woman is raped every 10 minutes and that a femicide happens every 7 hours, end quote.
Whatever
They
you
really
define
gotta
as...
get that one woman out of Brazil, man. She's really fucked.
And femicide...
Yes, that was a rape joke.
And femicide is just whenever a woman gets killed by a man for any reason. It must be.
They don't say it when a woman does it. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe it's called homicide. There's all kinds of ironies in there, but
there's something else that people need to pay attention here too, because the UN doesn't realize that they just admitted that parental alienation is a majority female behavior. Most of the people who engage in it are women.
What does that tell you?
Do this.
What do you think? What do you think you're getting across there? It's like saying prosecuting criminals is racist because it will disproportionately affect black people.
Exactly.
You're inadvertently saying
this. We are gravely concerned about the underlying gendered stereotypes that contribute to the legitimation of the concept of parental alienation. We know this is a mainly female behavior, and its resort mainly against women when the court decision regards the right to custody or guardianship, meaning women use this to kick the father out of the children's lives when they are done with him. Such gendered stereotypes are profoundly discriminatory, again, because women are the ones who do this the most, as the testimonies of women who claim their children are abused are being dismissed or considered of inferior value, meaning we want women to be able to make allegations without evidence and the court to act on them against men, because men's right to a relationship with their children doesn't mean anything. The pain a man goes through when his children are ripped away from him doesn't mean anything. The suffering of the children who don't get the benefit of their father's rearing, their child rearing, that doesn't mean anything. Only the liar who doesn't have evidence to prove the abuse, her rights mean something. That's what that means. These profoundly discriminatory approaches essentially result in a miscarriage of justice, meaning justice only applies to women. That's their idea of justice, is women getting what they want, not doing the right thing, not respecting the human rights of the child and the father and the mother. Maybe that's why these women are getting divorced, because they can't have relationships with their families. And the continued exposure of mother and child to abuse, meaning just the father having any involvement in the child's life, is now considered abuse of the mother. Life-threatening situations and other violations of their fundamental freedoms is, if we just appeal to the idea that men are killing their wives, even though it may not apply to this man, you have to let us use it against him. There we go. There's your translation. I'll shut the fuck up now and let everybody else talk.
Yeah, I was saying the corollary follows. If we don't prosecute criminals, then we are disproportionately affecting the victims of those criminals, who might just be a different race or sex. Can you muster a fuck to give about that? Didn't think so. Notice the UN does not pipe up whatsoever when the Scottish government tries to stack the deck against men and the crimes that only they can be said to have committed. But if Scotland or the broader United Kingdom amended their laws to include vaginal envelopment as a form of rape, you can bet your bottom and all the dollars in it, the UN will be reeing about how this will allow women to be prosecuted for the violent crimes they commit. Oh, the horror. So yeah, fuck the UN. They're not just lizard people, they are literally the devil. Whatever they say do the opposite, and you have your best shot of doing the right thing. However, there is a case to be made about how this law could be a bad idea. And it's what we've been trying to say to leftist lawmakers for years regarding censorship, among other things. If you give the government the ability to censor information they don't like, well, that's all well and good from your point of view when there's a leftist government in charge. But what happens if a different party comes into power and they inherit those draconian censorship laws? You experience the other side of the sword as it forms the rod you made for your own back. The left and the right really should be coming together and simply not allowing the government to control your speech or your rights in the first place. And the same thing applies here. You may think this anti-parental alienation law will level the playing field when it comes to men's and women's human rights. But then one day, who would have thought it, your democratically elected government gets overthrown by some nefarious socialist party. Sorry, I mean, totally legitimately got more votes than your previous far-right fascist party. Yeah, then what happens? They take this anti-parental alienation law and they do whatever the hell they want with it. And what do you suppose a modern socialist government is going to do with it? The same thing the UK government does with its definition of rape. When men do it, it exists. When women do it, it doesn't exist. Just like harassment online, just like sexism anywhere, just like totalitarianism itself. It's something men do to women. End of story. No matter how many laws you have on the books, they will all be interpreted along the lines of men commit this crime, women do not. If you really want to help men and boys and fathers, your best option is not to keep creating new laws, but to remove as many laws as you can. Don't give power to the government, because as all the available trends suggest, the government in aggregate will use its laws to crack down on men and curtail men's freedoms, because men are a threat to the government and women are the bargaining chip that the government uses to gain more and more power. So yeah, rather than extending these laws against parental alienation, maybe you should be looking into whatever laws made it so possible for women to engage in it in the first place with such impunity. I would imagine they're much the same in Brazil as they are in the rest of the world. Don't just let abusive, histrionic women come to the government to cry their crocodile tears and get everything they want. Did you even realize that was an option? Probably not. The government machine is like any other organism. All it can do is what it was designed to do, what it was evolved to do. In this case, make more laws. The idea of a government making fewer laws it's like a squirrel hoarding fewer nuts, like a cockroach laying fewer eggs, like a shark not swimming. You can't reason with a white whale, folks, nor can you take revenge on it. You just have to find something else to occupy your time and your attention. somehow. Like, I try to be white-pilled, folks. I really do. But I also strive to be honest. And honestly, I've looked at 14 million different futures, and I still haven't found the one where we win.
You want to be really honest?
I'll keep looking. Wish me luck.
You want to be profoundly, disturbingly honest. If you look at the way men use their power and the way women use their power, right? Men, the common man and the common woman, because when you get to the sociopaths that rise to the top of like leadership, they're pretty similar, right? But men use their power to do helpful things for their families, their communities, and so on. And there are women who have done that throughout history, and those women are remarkable. And for the most part, we know their names because they're rare. Women use their power for their own interests. And women's power and men's power are very different, right? Men are strong, men are creative, men are smart, men are innovative, and men have initiative. Like I said, the people who all haul their asses out of bed at 3 o'clock in the morning in the middle of the night in January to go fix the part of the grid that a squirrel bit into and wrecked, those are men. Those are not women. The people that haul their asses out of bed at 3 o'clock in the morning to go collect your garbage, those are men. Those are not women, right? Women use their power to prostitute their receipt of public sympathy for Gibbs. And I'm going to use the term because I know people don't like it because it's quote unquote an incel term, right? But it's goodies. Women have turned politics into the Monty Hall method of gaining things, or into prostitution. And they've made your government, wherever you live, your female voters have made their government, your government, their pimps. Your government strong arms you into paying taxes that go to support Gibbs for women. That's basically what happens. How is that dramatically different from prostitution? And in this instance, where we're talking about marriage and parenthood and custody and child support, I mean, that's essentially prostituting their sexuality for Gibbs. Right. So I actually think the groups that have quite a bit correct about the relationship right now in society and for a very long time, like women have done this for centuries. Women have a centuries-long habit of prostituting the compassion that they receive from society for goodies. It's not something that just happened when women got the vote. It's not something that just happened when in the 20th century, the United States decided to create welfare programs and stuff. The UK had welfare programs under Elizabeth, and Elizabeth had to write poor laws because of this phenomenon. So until women grow up, until women become accountable for themselves and their choices, and stop using the government to interfere in their relationships and gain leverage over their husbands, and gain leverage over the guy down the street to take his money too, that has nothing to do with her, but she's still getting some of his tax dollars, right? The guy that gets up at 3 o'clock in the morning to go fix the grid or collect your trash is paying taxes to support a woman that will never fuck him, other than by taking his money. She will never give him a hug. She will never tell him he did a good job. She won't even consider the fact that he does those things, and she doesn't care. As long as, when she gets up in the morning, the lights come on and the trash isn't piling up outside her house, she won't think about him. But if she doesn't get those goodies from his tax dollars, she'll bitch up a storm, even though she did nothing to earn them. And that's basically what's going on here. This is female entitlement. This is hypergamy. This is basically treating men as slaves. The worst thing that humanity ever did to the family was get the government involved in it. There is no reason at all that the government has to be involved in your family. It doesn't have to be involved in your marriage. You don't need a license to be married from the government. That's something that you can have a relationship with another person without the government's permission. How many friends do you have? How many people do you hang out with regularly that you don't have any kind of piece of paper from the government that acknowledges that you do that? Right? Women getting the government involved, and it was women. They wanted leverage against their husbands. Right? They wanted to be able to leave. They wanted to be able to take everything about all the benefits of being married with them and just screw him totally. Right? But you don't need a license to have a relationship. You don't need your government to be involved in your relationship. And the idea of having to adjudicate parental custody and so on, that's not necessary either. You don't need a government for that either. All the government has done is give one gender power over the other. Where if the government wasn't involved at all, women would have to treat men equally in marriage. They would have to treat their husbands like partners. They would have to care what they thought. They would have to be as accountable for their loyalty as he is for his loyalty, and for what they bring to the marriage as he is to what he brings to the marriage. And they wouldn't be able to take his children away without a real knockdown, drag-out fight. So honestly, the worst thing that's ever happened to the family is getting the government involved. And it's only been done by women prostituting their receipt of your compassion for goodies, for gibs, for prizes.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And you know who loses the most? Your kids.
Yeah. All right. Does anybody else have anything they wanted to say about this? I think between Hannah and Mike, they kind of really covered it. But yeah, it is a messed up story. I hope that the people of Brazil, or the government of Brazil, ignores the UN. They're obviously not acting in their interest, and I have a feeling they might, because despite the fact that there is some upheaval in Brazil politically, I think that the majority of the citizens, the people, they're not interested at all in this kind of legislation. So we'll see. And I hope that they do manage to say, you know what, UN, this is none of your business. I don't know why they're even getting involved. And
I don't know why the UN exists.
Yeah, I don't either.
Is anyone pushing to abolish the UN? It's an utter fucking clown show.
Yeah, the UN is shit.
That's actually a socialist globalist initiative. The UN.
Yeah.
That's why it exists. It exists specifically to take away your freedom. That's the bottom line of why it exists.
Yeah. The UN is it's a commie vehicle. We don't need it. I've been fine for most of my life without ever having to see what the UN thinks, right? So yeah,
it's supposed to be there to prevent future world wars, right? Doesn't seem to be working out, does it?
No, it's not. It's supposed to be something like
the
that.
UN's
But it's
been behind every world war, and so I think there was a thing that came out about in response to Fahrenheit 9/11, where some ex-military guys were talking about the UN and world wars and referring to and it's fair. The Gulf War was World War III, because think about how many countries were involved in it. and the whole war on terrorism. So we're in like World War 5 or 6 or 7 now. If you want to separate them into separate world wars, but the truth is, World War I has never ended, and that's Woodrow Wilson's fault. And if I remember right, so is the status of the UN. And Woodrow Wilson was a socialist, progressive Democrat.
Those of you who aspire to time travel just so you can go back in time and kill Hitler, honestly, you'd be better off assassinating Woodrow Wilson.
Yeah, get rid of that guy and Hitler never gains power.
Yeah, so that's true. All right, so we're going to move on to the final story. And to do that, we're going to go to the far east of Japan, and we're going to see what they're up to. So, Mike J, if you could be so kind.
Why, certainly, Brian. So, the Tokyo Institute of Technology, also known as Tokyo Tech, wants more female graduates, despite launching initiatives to help entice Japanese-speaking women, not necessarily Japanese women, but Japanese-speaking women, to join Tokyo Tech's various schools. Only 13% of students enrolled in bachelor degree programs were female as of May 2022. To try and combat this, 4 of Tokyo Tech's schools, because Tokyo Tech is a number of schools, which are the School of Materials and Chemical Technology, the School of Computing, the School of Life Science and Technology, and the School of Environment and Society. They will be instituting quotas, creating over 140 positions open for Japanese-speaking women only. This move is driven as a method of promoting diversity and inclusion, which Tokyo Tech claims is one of their key campus policies.
Yeah, I'm going to get this in before Hannah does her thing.
Mm-hmm.
Given that Japan has had its grass eaters since long before the West had its MGTOW or recognized it as a phenomenon, it's quite instructive to see them as a precursor to what we're experiencing in the West. And there's the stereotype of a grass eater is someone who's just checked out from the rat race, a man who would rather work a low-paying job and spend his free time playing video games for the rest of his life. But that's not the full story. There are some men in a subcategory of what you might call grass eaters who are not interested in having relationships with women and raising families, but are interested in building a career. They're interested in accumulating wealth, even if they don't have a family on which to spend that wealth. And those guys are still in the workforce, doing everything they can to climb the corporate ladder with nothing else to distract them. And as for the men who do want to raise families, guess what? They're still in the workforce as well. If you're a man who wants to raise a family and you're not already wealthy, you need to earn money and you need to climb that very same corporate ladder. And you're more incentivized to do it than any woman is, regardless of any systems of quotas and diversity ties. When a man is career driven, he will pursue a career with every fiber of his being. When a man is family driven, he will also pursue a career with every fiber of his being. This appears to be a universal phenomenon, as pervasive in the East as it is in the West, and everywhere in between. You're not going to change this by putting women on the training wheels forever. It's the Norwegian gender paradox, validated as a truism at every step of the way. The more options you give women, the more they will gravitate towards family-driven priorities. Men, in the meantime, no matter how many or how few options you give them, will still gravitate towards career-driven priorities, broadly speaking. How many more gynocentric experiments do we have to undergo as a species before these feminist, communist quacks finally throw their hands up and admit that men and women are different? And maybe, just maybe, we should let them be. But no, that's authoritarianism in a nutshell. The one thing we cannot do is let people be, because then we won't have control, and we'd rather capriciously drive the human race to extinction than entertain the possibility that anyone can live their own lives without the divine guidance of the better than you community. You'd think a nation based on Buddhism would understand this, would understand that letting nature run its course is surely the best way to approach this uncertainty and this fear of the future that we have. But yeah, no, nothing seems to work. All roads lead to the Big Brother future. I despair. I'm despairing again. Sorry, folks. I'll let Hannah do your thing.
Well, before I do, does anybody else have anything to say? Okay, I may be giving people some things to bounce off of here. Before I talk about the current situation, I'm going to give you a little history, and I'm going to start with the fact that institutes of higher learning, although they've changed in shape and what they do over time to some degree, no pun intended, have existed for millennia. Right? This isn't something brand new that just happened yesterday, that universities exist. What happened brand new yesterday, as in last century, was that it became common for people who were not wealthy or who were not working very hard to raise their social and economic status above that of their ancestors, their parents in particular, but their ancestors in general, would attend university. And it really took to the mid 20th century before it became really, really common. The industrial age is what did that, because before the industrial age hit, it's not exactly its peak, but it hit that part where a lot of people's work was made easier by machines that came about through the earlier parts of the industrial age. Now people have a need to train through higher learning in order to do a lot of jobs that would have been done, you would have learned through like apprenticeship and so on. But there's also an expectation where there isn't a need. And also more people have the time and the means to be able to do that. And one of the things that made it even more common for people to attend university was the U.S. during the Vietnam War actually made college students exempt from the draft. So it became a divide between people who could attend college and people who couldn't attend college. And a lot of people worked their asses off to pay their tuition, which was much lower than it is now. And then the United States government got involved in paying for people's tuition, and now look where we are, right? The other part of that history that is important to this is how that evolved with women differently than with men. Because if you look at prior to the part of the industrial age where work became safer due to work standards that unions fought for, and also due to machines being available and knowledge being available, that allowed our culture to make many different workplaces safer, or at least less dangerous than they were before, right? So now women are getting involved in work. Prior to that, when women did attend institutes of higher learning, quite frequently they would attend and they would take, 7 or 8 languages, and that was a feather in their cap. but they didn't use it to serve their community or earn a living or build a reputation other than, Julie speaks 7 different languages. Isn't she cool? How sophisticated? And that was it, right? They used it for social purposes for themselves, for their own benefit. And if Julie studied law, society didn't get a great lawyer. Julie got a feather in her hat, right? And it goes on with medicine. It goes on with technology, everything. So where we in the United States have Title IX, that came about because universities need to be a service to their community in order to be profitable, or at least they did back then. So they needed people to view the university as a pathway to a career, a job. They needed it to be a pathway to prestige and so on. And men weren't going to attend a university if most of its reputation came from women getting bragging rights instead of, well, this great scientist came from this university, this highly recognized doctor came from this university, this lawyer that won this landmark case came from this university. So they would have quotas. They had quotas for men. And feminists just went through the roof about that. They decided that was unfair and outdated practice. Well, it was outdated by the time that Title IX passed. And all Title IX originally said was that you couldn't discriminate on the basis of sex as part of your university practice in academic areas. So no quotas, right? And the idea was women have just as much right to a career as a man does, right? And the truth is, by the time Title IX passed in the United States, universities were already starting to open up more seats academically to women because women were going on to practice law, and women were going on to practice medicine, and women were going on to work in science and technology and become great artists and all that stuff. When they were going to go into university, they were coming out of it looking for a job, not bragging rights. It wasn't in fashion for women to wander around telling everybody that they could speak 7 languages, but they weren't doing anything with that, right? If they could speak 7 languages, they would get a job as an interpreter and travel the world. So here we have in the 21st century, what is Japan doing? The exact reverse. And it seems like feminists may have gotten this pushed into place. The goal is probably to increase the people that can be taxed. Right? If you have both men and women working high-earning jobs, you get to tax both sexes, especially in a country where the marriage rate is down and the reproductive rate is down quite a bit. And this isn't going to help with the reproductive rate at all. Because these women are going to go to school, focus on what they're studying, and move on. And the guys are not going to date them because they are afraid of getting falsely accused.
Yeah.
The MGTOW phenomenon in Japan is bigger, wider, and hit first and harder than in Western culture because there's a great amount of dishonor in Japan around behaving inappropriately toward a woman, or even just being accused. You don't even have to be guilty. If you're on a train with a woman and she accuses you of groping her, you got to get the heck out of there. The other men are going to beat the shit out of you. You're dishonored. You're humiliated, even if you didn't do it. So this is really actually going to be a great detriment. But at the same time, I'll bet you we won't hear a single feminist speaking out against this. Even though when the reverse was the norm in the United States, they threw a giant hissy fit and got a law passed that has now morphed into one of the biggest attacks on due process in our nation's history. So this is really bad. And this is really, again, a way of weakening their culture and attacking the men in their culture. It's not to benefit the women. It is to damage the men. And I hope that Japanese people don't fall for that. I don't know about their leadership, but I hope that the public in Japan does not fall for that. Because if they do, that nation, like the Japanese race, could actually go extinct due to lack of reproduction if they continue on the trajectory they're on right now.
Yep.
That would be a heartbreaking shame.
Yeah. Does anyone else have any thoughts on this story? I think that between Hannah and Mike, you guys basically like gave it the, you know,
we're dominating tonight.
The full Monty over here, yeah. So, well, I think that's good. And if again, like, I look forward to seeing your thoughts and your comments on this. So, you know, feel free to put a comment in the comments section. It looks like Japan is basically just doing what we have already done over here in the West. And I don't know, like, if they're going to push back or if this is just going to happen or what. So, all right. So anyway, with that said, we are at the end and we're going to be looking at this article from Ms. Magazine. Men are 100% responsible for unwanted pregnancies. Gabrielle Blair on her viral tweet turned book, Ejaculate Responsibly. Amazing, isn't it? She basically made a tweet. It went a little viral, probably because she has a lot of followers and also because she made a kind of a big edgy claim about, you know, men being responsible for their jizz. And
no. It went viral because women made it viral after realizing that it takes all of the responsibility for a sex act, all of the responsibility for their side of a sex act, and just erases it.
Yeah. And that's basically what it is about. So we will be looking at this in the patron show. If you'd like to join us, you have to become a badger yourself by going to feedthebadger.com. $5 a month will get you into the Discord. And if you give it, you know, higher levels, then you'll have more access to, you know, different sort of parts of our Discord and by extension, our community. So please consider doing that. Now, I look forward to seeing you guys in the patron show. If you like this video, please smash the like button, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications so you know when our shows go live. Leave us a comment, let us know what you think about what we discussed on the show, and most importantly, please share this video because sharing is caring. It is really the best way that you can help our channel grow. So please consider sharing this video, maybe on Reddit, you know, wherever. So thank you guys so much for coming on today's episode of HBR News, and we will talk to you all in the next video.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.